Series, friends, of the Daf Yomi. We're on Yud Gimel of Masechet Zevachim over here. I'm just by a park here in the city of Bet Shemesh. I've actually added a lot of green also to this park quite recently, so it does feel a bit different. I've lived here for about 14 years, so it's always nice to see the parks of Israel decorated. And we're speaking in page number 13. We're speaking all about Korban Pesach territory. Obviously, we learned about this in Sefer Shemot. Naturally, I think in the Parashat of Bo we're introduced to it itself. Now, we learned at the start inside the Mishnah, or if we go all the way back, just nearly 2 weeks ago, that if, let's say, a Kohen, slaughtered a Pesach sacrifice, thinking it was a sin offering, at that point in time, or vice versa, he did the opposite, the sacrifice would become hasul, or also known as invalidated in English. Each animal must be sacrificed in lishma, for its own sake, which we've spoken about on various occasions before. Now, in today, the Mishnah reiterates this law. Why? In order to make it clear that not only, let's say, the shech, the slaughterer itself, but the additional elements of conducting this sacrificial service must also be done for the sake of the specific offering the Talmud shares, and the Talmud itself, the Gemara, is going to share details. With regards to the Korban Pesach and the sin offering, the Korban Chatat, where one slaughtered them not for their sake, or he collected or conveyed or sprinkle this blood not for their sake itself without proper intention, or where he performed one of these sacrificial, let's say, performances for their sake and not for their sake, or not for their sake and for their sake, all these, let's say, are unfit, it might be rendered. Now, there's 4 separate actions that constitute the sacrifice itself of it, the korban. One of them is slaughtering the animal. The next is collecting the blood into a container, also bringing the container to the Mizbeach, and then sprinkling the blood on the Mizbeach also naturally. If at any of these points the Kohen involved in any of these actions, let's say, stop thinking, he paused his intentions and mistakenly thought he was conducting, let's say, a different sacrifice, like Korban Pesach, instead of one of the other sacrifices, when it was really a sin offering or vice versa, the whole thing seemingly is going to be invalidated at this stage in time. Now, in order to explore the significance of this ruling, it's important to understand that invalidating a Pesach sacrifice in particular could potentially, would be very, very bad over here. Why is that? We know from the description in Torah we learn about in Parashat Bo, I believe, in chapter number 12. And also we learn in Masechet Zevachim that the Pesach, Korban Pesach itself, the paschal lamb, let's just say, needed to be sacrificed on the afternoon before the first night of Pesach. And that it was eaten communally, with several families pooling their funds to buy, let's say, a lamb over there at that point in time, have it slaughtered in the Bet HaMikdash, and then cook it and eat it all together. It will be like a proper feast where everyone will get together, as we learned about in the story in Parashat Bo at the time period of the culmination of the plagues, how it really agitated Mitzrayim at that stage in time. What would happen if just a few hours before the holiday started, Pesach started, an expensive Pesach, let's say lamb, the Korban Pesach itself, was declared invalid? What do we do? It's could be hugely problematic potentially over here. The families may have no money, or more still, they might not have the time to buy another one, and the opportunity to participate in the mitzvah of eating the Pesach lamb over here, the Korban Pesach, at Passover Seder would be missed. So what do we do over here? What's advice used? Now, one might ask themselves, how could such an error happen in the first place? How could a Kohen inside the Bet HaMikdash, whose job is to offer sacrifices, mistake one offering for another on this of all the days? Now, the question is, anyone obviously who observes Pesach, we all know, is coming, and we know that about the importance of Pesach. We're actually half the cycle away, because we're in Rosh Hashanah, so we just really had a mini Pesach night with all the Simanim here on Rosh Hashanah, one could argue. But when one is practicing, one is preparing for Pesach, there's obviously a lot of work going on. There's inside the house, all the cleaning, let's just say there's chaos, there's working, there's so much going on over here at that point in time. You know, how could the mistake be made? That's the question posed. Now, on the afternoon before Pesach, the Bet HaMikdash would have been very, very busy at that point in time, with many coming to Jerusalem for the Shlosh Regalim, the pilgrimage festival respectively, and money is going to be exchanged for various animals to sacrifice. It's one of the Shlosh Regalim. We're about to come inside Sukkot, which is one of them. There's also Shavuot, and Pesach naturally being the third pilgrimage festival. So let's say it would have been literally packed. So it's understandable that a Kohen might mix things up and think that, let's say, Reuven's Korban Pesach was really, let's just say, Shimon's Korban Pesach over there. That mistake can be made. Now, in the face of such a possible mistake that could potentially be made, and the serious consequences that would result from any invalidated sacrifice, the rabbi is trying to find ways to mitigate, obviously, this potential disqualification. Now, for example, let's say Rav Shimon, he deems it fit, let's say the prohibited intent was during the, let's say, the conveying of the blood, as he would say, it's impossible to sacrifice an offering without slaughtering, or without collection, or without sprinkling, but it's possible, let's say, without conveying, if one of the slaughterers, let's say, alongside the altar and sprinkles. Now, according over here, let's say to Rabbi Shimon, if the animal is slaughtered adjacent to the altar, a step is saved since the blood does not need to travel anywhere in order for it to be sprinkled. And so also, if, let's say, the Kohen, he forgot whether it was a Pesach sacrifice, a Korban Pesach, or a Korban Chatat, for example, during, let's just say, this specific step, it will still be considered a validated sacrifice over here, validated Korban, one could argue. And as we're going to see, as we progress Masechet itself here in Masechet Zevachim, we'll see other examples, dugmot in itself respectively, of times when a Kohen might get, let's say, mitbalbel, confused, and have improper intent while performing a sacrifice. And we'll also see additional ways that the rabbis attempt to, let's say, and come with a peshara, let's just say, a salvation of an offering that might otherwise potentially have been disqualified sometimes. In this specific case, mixing up the Korban Pesach and the Korban Chatat is an error that can only occur once a year on the eve of Pesach, respectively, over here. So I just took this from the My Jewish Learning site over here with some insights, just doing Shabbat shopping now over here, enjoying. They've actually done up this park quite recently, so it never used to have all this grass around it, but yeah, nothing like Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Erev Shabbat, Parshat Vayelech, the shortest Parsha in the Torah. Let's see some scenes of the city. As look at the park, friends, over here, beautiful. As we get ready now to do the shopping, friends. Wishing you all a fantastic Shabbat, a Chag Sameach.